In the teeming heart of New York City, a literary enigma had taken the world by storm. Echo, the elusive writer, seemed to appear out of nowhere, their words weaving through the collective consciousness of readers like a haunting melody. Every novel, essay, and short story published under the pen name struck a chord, exploring the depths of human emotion, the intricacies of society, and the complexity of the human mind. Critics praised Echo's work as groundbreaking, profound, and timeless. Yet, for all the acclaim, one question persisted. Who was Echo? Speculation ran wild across blogs, literary magazines, and even casual book clubs. Some claimed Echo was a millionaire recluse, hiding from the limelight. Others suggested Echo was a former CIA operative who had seen too much of the world and sought refuge in fiction. Conspiracy theories took root, proposing that Echo was a group of ghostwriters or perhaps even an AI, programmed to produce literary masterpieces. But amidst the rumors, one thing was certain. No one knew the real Echo, and no one had ever seen them. This mystery added to Echo's allure, and soon, the public became obsessed, not just with the writing, but with uncovering the person behind it. Everyone wanted to claim they had discovered the truth, but no one had any real answers. Samantha's quest. Among the many drawn to Echo's mystery was Samantha Carter, a seasoned journalist known for her dogged pursuit of truth. Samantha had built her career, exposing hidden stories and unraveling complex mysteries, and the enigma of Echo presented a challenge she couldn't resist. Unlike other journalists, who merely speculated, Samantha believed she could uncover the truth, and so began her obsessive search to find Echo. It started as a professional curiosity. Samantha read every one of Echo's works, annotating each page, searching for clues. She scoured interviews with publishers, literary agents, and editors, hoping someone would slip and reveal a detail that could lead her to Echo's identity. But every path led to a dead end. Echo was a phantom, an enigma who communicated only through intermediaries, leaving no trace behind. Samantha's frustration grew as months passed without progress. She questioned everyone in the literary scene, from bookstore owners to critics, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who was Echo? What was the source of their talent? And why were they so intent on remaining anonymous? Then, one evening, as she sat alone in her dimly lit office, surrounded by piles of notes and drafts, her phone buzzed. She had received an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "The truth awaits." Samantha's pulse quickened. She clicked the message open, her heart pounding. "Meet me at the old bookstore on 5th Street. Come alone. 11 p.m. The email offered no other details. It wasn't signed. The rain poured down in torrents that night, slicking the streets of New York City and turning the skyline into a blurry glow of neon lights. Clutching her umbrella against the downpour, Samantha made her way to the old bookstore. It had been years since anyone had mentioned the shop, and yet, when she arrived, it stood just as she remembered, a relic of another era, with dusty windows and a faded sign overhead. The dim street lamp outside flickered like a dying ember. Samantha hesitated for a moment, wondering if this was a wild goose chase. Was this just another hoax? Another false lead? But her instincts told her otherwise. She had spent too long chasing shadows to back out now. She stepped inside, and the door creaked shut behind her with an eerie finality. The bookstore smelled of old paper and wood polish. The shelves, covered in dust, were filled with books no one had touched in years. The place felt abandoned, a forgotten treasure trove of stories. It was the kind of place where secrets were born and buried. A soft sound echoed from the back, and Samantha moved toward it cautiously. As she rounded the corner of a shelf, she saw a figure standing in the shadows, a tall, cloaked figure whose face was hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. "Who are you?" Samantha demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move. "I am Echo's messenger, they said, their voice low and steady. "Echo has been waiting for you." Samantha's breath caught in her throat. "Waiting for me?" "Yes," the figure replied. "There are things you need to know." Without another word, the figure turned and walked deeper into the store, motioning for Samantha to follow. They moved through a narrow passageway that opened into a small room, where a single table and 2 chairs stood beneath the flickering light of a chandelier. At the table sat another figure, hooded and silent, a cup of coffee steaming in front of them. Samantha's hands trembled as she stepped forward. The cloaked figure motioned for her to sit. As Samantha sat across from the hooded figure, she couldn't see their face, but she could feel the weight of their presence. "Welcome, Samantha," the figure said softly, their voice neither male nor female, just a whisper in the dark. "I am Echo." Samantha could barely breathe. She had spent months chasing this moment, but now that she was here, she found herself paralyzed by the mystery. There, right in front of her, sat Echo, the person whose words had enchanted millions. But instead of clarity, the meeting only deepened the mystery. "I have to ask," Samantha began, her voice shaky but determined. "Why the secrecy? Why hide?" Echo leaned forward, their hood still obscuring their face. "Because my identity doesn't matter," they said. "My words are what matter. The stories should stand on their own, free of the weight of a name or face." "But people want to know who you are," Samantha insisted. "They're fascinated by you. Don't you think your identity is part of the story?" Echo shook their head slowly. "If they knew who I was, they would project their own assumptions onto me. They would search for meaning in my life instead of in my words. This way, the stories are pure. The reader can interpret them without bias." Samantha paused, considering the words. It was a bold philosophy, one that rejected the cult of celebrity that often surrounded successful authors. Echo wasn't hiding out of fear. They were hiding to protect the integrity of their work. But Samantha wasn't ready to let go of her quest just yet. "How long have you been writing?" she asked, trying to shift the conversation. "Since childhood," Echo replied. "Writing has always been my way of making sense of the world. I've written under many names, but Echo is the one that stuck." Samantha's curiosity deepened. If Echo had been writing for years, then perhaps they had left a trail. But before she could probe further, Echo dropped a bombshell. "I'm not one person." The collective revelation. Samantha blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What do you mean?" Echo's hooded figure leaned back, as if contemplating how much to reveal. "Echo is not one voice. It is many. We are a collective of writers, each contributing our own perspectives, our own stories. Together, we've created the persona of Echo." Samantha's mind raced. The theory that Echo was a collective had been dismissed by many as a wild rumor. Yet here it was, the truth. A group of writers, all operating under the same name, crafting stories that resonated with millions. But why? Samantha asked, bewildered. Why create this collective identity? Why not publish under your own names? Echo smiled, though Samantha couldn't see it. She could hear it in their voice. Because we wanted to prove that storytelling transcends the individual. We live in a world obsessed with personalities, with the idea that the person behind the story is more important than the story itself. But we believe the opposite. The story is what matters, not the storyteller. Samantha sat back, her mind spinning. The revelation was more profound than she had expected. It wasn't just one person hiding behind a pen name. It was an entire group of writers, united in their belief that the story should take precedence over individual fame. The power of invisibility. Over the next hour, Echo explained the origins of the collective. They were writers from all walks of life, novelists, journalists, poets, and playwrights who had come together with a shared goal, to create stories that reflected the world. Without the constraints of personal ego, they had each contributed their own voices to the Echo persona, blending their styles, ideas, and experiences into a seamless narrative. We wanted to create something bigger than any one of us, Echo said. Something that would live on, even after we're gone. As Samantha listened, she realized that Echo's invisibility wasn't a marketing ploy or a stunt, it was a philosophy. The collective believed that by removing themselves from the equation, they could create stories that were more honest, more universal. They had chosen invisibility not to hide, but to free themselves from the pressures of fame, from the biases of identity. Samantha was left speechless. She had spent so long searching for the truth, only to discover that the truth was even more complex than she had imagined. The final revelation. As the night wore on, Samantha knew her time with Echo was coming to an end. The hooded figure had revealed enough to satisfy her curiosity, but there was one last question burning in her mind. "Will you ever reveal yourselves?" she asked. "Will the world ever know who you are?" Echo was silent for a long moment, then replied, "Perhaps someday. But right now, our work speaks louder than any name or face could. Revealing ourselves would shift the focus from the stories to us. And that's not what we want." Samantha understood their reasoning, yet a part of her still felt unsatisfied. There was something so human about wanting to know the people behind the words, something irresistible. But Echo's commitment to remaining anonymous was a testament to their belief in the purity of storytelling. Echo stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "You have your answers, Samantha. I trust you'll use them wisely." Samantha rose from her chair, still processing everything she had learned. "Will we meet again?" she asked, hoping for one more opportunity to delve deeper into the collective's world. Echo's hooded figure paused for a moment before turning away. "Perhaps, if you're ready for more truths. But for now, this is enough." And with that, Echo disappeared into the shadows of the bookstore, leaving Samantha standing alone. The article. For weeks after that meeting, Samantha wrestled with how to write her article. She had uncovered the truth behind Echo, but how much should she reveal? Could she write about the collective without exposing too much? How could she balance the public's hunger for knowledge with Echo's desire for privacy? In the end, she penned a piece that walked the fine line between revelation and respect. Instead of focusing on Echo's identity, she focused on their mission, the idea that storytelling transcended the individual, that words had the power to move people regardless of who wrote them. The article went viral, not because it revealed Echo's identity, but because it explored the deeper question of what it means to be a writer in a world obsessed with celebrity. Samantha framed Echo's anonymity as a gift to readers, a way for them to connect with the stories on a deeper level, without the distractions of fame or persona. Critics praised her for her restraint, and readers were more captivated by Echo than ever. Instead of chasing the writers behind the name, people began to focus on the stories themselves, dissecting them for meaning and insight. Echo's collective identity became part of the mythos, adding another layer of intrigue to their work. The legacy. Months passed, and Samantha's life returned to its usual rhythm. The mystery of Echo had been solved, but her article had left enough unanswered questions to keep the public engaged. Echo's popularity only grew, and their books continued to top bestseller lists around the world. But something had changed for Samantha. Her meeting with Echo had shifted her perspective on writing, fame, and identity. She found herself thinking more deeply about her own work, about the stories she wanted to tell and the legacy she wanted to leave behind. Then, one quiet afternoon, a package arrived at her door. It was small and nondescript, with no return address. Inside was a manuscript, neatly bound and accompanied by a handwritten note. "For Samantha, you understand the truth now. Here's what comes next." The manuscript was titled, "The Invisible Writer's Guide to Creative Freedom." Samantha smiled as she read the title. It was a gift, an acknowledgement that she had become part of Echo's world. As she leafed through the pages, she realized that the manuscript was more than just a guide. It was a manifesto. It detailed the philosophy behind Echo's collective, explaining how they had come together, how they wrote, and why they believed so strongly in their anonymity. The manuscript was filled with insights about creativity, collaboration, and the power of storytelling. It revealed how the collective had navigated the pressures of the literary world, how they had supported one another through the highs and lows of their careers, and how they had built a community of writers who believed in the purity of their craft. Samantha read the manuscript cover to cover, absorbing every word. It was a revelation, an intimate glimpse into the minds of the writers she had been chasing for so long. But more than that, it was a guide for her own journey as a storyteller. Years later, Samantha had become a renowned author in her own right. Her novels explored the same themes that had captivated her in Echo's work: identity, truth, and the power of words. But she never forgot the lesson she had learned from the invisible writers, that the story was always more important than the storyteller. One day, while walking through the city, she passed by a bookstore and saw one of Echo's latest releases prominently displayed in the window. The cover was as enigmatic as ever, with no author photo, no biography, just the simple name, Echo. Samantha stepped inside and picked up the book, flipping through the pages. As she did, she noticed a familiar phrase, one that had appeared in the manuscript. Echo had sent her years ago. She smiled, realizing that Echo was still out there, still creating, still pushing the boundaries of what it meant to be a writer. And though the world still didn't know their true identities, their words continued to shine, transcending the need for fame or recognition. Samantha left the bookstore, the weight of the book in her hands a comforting reminder of the power of invisibility. She knew that, in the end, it didn't matter who Echo was. What mattered was the story they left behind, a story that would live on long after the writers themselves had faded into the shadows. Years passed, and Echo's legacy grew even stronger. The world never learned the true names of the writers behind the pen name, but their stories continued to inspire. Writers around the world began adopting Echo's philosophy, choosing to publish anonymously or under pseudonyms, believing in the power of the collective voice. Samantha, now older and more reflective, looked back on her career with a sense of peace. She had uncovered the truth behind Echo, but more importantly, she had discovered the truth about herself. She had learned that writing wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about connecting with readers, about telling stories that mattered. And as she sat down to work on her latest novel, she thought of Echo, the invisible writers who had shown her the way. In the end, it wasn't about being seen. It was about being heard. And in that moment, Samantha knew she had found her own version of creative freedom.